All right, we're rolling. We're rolling this week.
We
Busy
are
week.
going.
Yes, we have a fantastic guest today. Coach Kurt Hines. Coach is the head coach of Coronado High School. He's had a tremendous amount of success there. But one of the things I also love about him is, if you go to his X page, now it's X, I guess, instead of Twitter,
Yeah.
X.com page.
At what point do we stop calling it Twitter?
I don't know. I guess you just don't call it Twitter. He does so much great stuff on leadership and a ton of great videos on it. And it's second to none in what he does there. I think just, how he's trying to help young men mold, young kids and men and young men and mold into actual men and really developing them through football. And I think he takes some great stances. I love what he talks about. He's a role model as a coach. So it's not just his success on the field that's fantastic, which is obviously great, but how he carries himself and what he presents. And he, keynote speaks around the country about a lot about leadership. So without further ado, let's bring on Coach Kurt Hines. What's going on, Coach?
Gentlemen, how are you guys?
Coach, appreciate you taking the time, man.
Absolutely. I'm just going to say, before we hopped online here, just share with your audience, born and raised the East Coast, whenever I get a chance to connect with guys from the East Coast, there's just nothing against anyone else, but there's something different about us. And I mean that in the best of ways. So it's a blessing to be on with you guys.
Excited to talk to you, Coach.
No, there's no doubt about it. East Coast guys, they let it fly, and let the chips fall where they may at that point after that. But it's well, I guess there's two sides to it, and you experience it in California. There are the people that'll let it fly and talk the truth, and then there are people that are, hiding under their, I don't know, their chairs or whatever. They
safe space. Yeah.
The safe space. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's two distinct groups, definitely. But talk about your career as a coach before we really get rolling, and talk about how you got to this point, and then also how you really, because I followed you for a long time, how you really thrusted into that leadership role. Originally, I remember some of your early stuff was kind of you just talking about what you were doing, and then it just caught fire. You know what I mean? Yeah. So talk about all that with your career.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying for your listeners, and I don't think I share with you guys, I am an expert at nothing. And I mean that sincerely. I think we live in a world today where there's so many self-proclaimed experts and gurus, and and I say this with pride, I'm just another freaking guy who's passionate about what I'm blessed to do. I've been coaching high school football, just started yesterday, my 27th season. I coached for years on the East Coast. I started out actually, my first coaching experience ever was when I was still playing football at Plymouth, New Hampshire.
Yep. Nice.
And I say that proudly, and I know you gentlemen work with a lot of colleges. I was a Division III football player and loved it. I wasn't good enough to play D1, and I have zero regrets. I knew I wanted to keep playing football, not wear a jersey or a sweatshirt for my mom or dad or girlfriend to wear and just be someone else's tackling dummy. I was good enough to play great Division III football and love that. But what happened was when I was in college, one of our professors was looking for a volunteer. She asked if there was a volunteer. I was in school for elementary education. That's what I do that pays the bill, so to speak. Yep. And she said there was the elementary school up the road or middle school that had a flag football team for students with special needs. And I jumped at the chance. I said, yeah. And the strange thing is I had never, ever thought about coaching football before. I played from second grade. I was a fat little second grader all the way through college. But I remember the first practice, and I'll make this real quick, but I was standing, guys, probably about 4 yards away from this young woman with Down syndrome, tossing a little football to her, and she dropped it the fourth, fifth, sixth, over and over and over again. When she finally caught it, her eyes lit up. And for me, I was like, that's it. I want to do that. Like if I can have that impact. And that was a paradigm shift for me. So I reached out after my second or third year teaching. I reached out to a local high school and said, I'm just looking to coach, just looking to get my foot in the door somewhere. I'll do whatever you want. Hold shields, bags, dang, I'll help get water, whatever. And they were looking for a head freshman coach. So I was kind of baptism by fire. I got into coaching right away. My first 7 years, made a ton of mistakes, but fortunately was surrounded by other coaches who knew my heart and knew that I had the right intentions. And then from there, just continued to progress and ended up becoming a head coach after being at several different schools in New Hampshire It was a brand new high school, Bedford, New Hampshire. I jokingly say we set records my first year as head coach, which I think.
Yes.
But the records we set were getting our teeth kicked in more than any other school in the history of football. We at the end of every game, when you walk through baseball, football, basketball, you walk through, shake hands, and say good game. We were so bad that no one even said good game. They were just like, beautiful stadium, great field. I'm like, I'm that bad. But we went from getting our teeth kicked in every single week to winning 2 games my second year as head coach, to going to the playoffs my third year, to my last 4 years. Not I, but we went to the state championship 3 out of the 4 years. We had built a powerhouse, and then our oldest daughter of 4, we have 3 daughters and 1 son, called, and she'd gotten married and said, hey, she's living out here in San Diego, I'm having a baby. So my heart leapt. I was like, yes. Now, literally a week prior to that, we had just lost the state championship by 6 points in Division I, the highest division in New Hampshire. And we had a ton of studs coming back. We were redoing a brand new weight room. So I was just feeling like this is my football home. I have zero desire to ever leave. And then I get a call saying I'm going to be a grandfather. So I'm like, all right, well, we're moving to California, the land of the crazy people. I love California. There are some crazy people out here, but we've also met some great friends, and I love those who I coach and coach with and their families. But came out here as an assistant coach for 2 years at a private Christian school. Absolutely loved the experience. Still teach at the elementary school there. But 7 years now, 7 years ago, took the head coaching job at Coronado, and it's a storied school. The school's been around for, I think, 106 years, 107 years. But we've always been kind of middle of the pack in Division IV, if you will, in football. And just love everything about it. Love who I'm coaching, love who I'm coaching with. And I'm more amped up, as I said earlier, I'm more amped up for this going into my 27th year coaching than I've ever been before. I feel like I've kind of recommitted myself to being the best coach I can be. And I don't think I ever fell off consciously, but as I look back and reflect, I think all coaches do at the end of every season about, all right, what do we need to change offensively or defensively with our strength and conditioning? I did a lot of soul searching. I was like, man, I've gotten a little soft, not just around the midsection, but I've gotten a little soft on my expectation with the players. And made that very clear to them all offseason that, hey, come August 1st, you're going to find out what the new me looks like, the new and improved. And I could see it in the guys' eyes yesterday. They were on fire for it, and I'm just thrilled for them and thrilled for us.
That's very interesting. It is difficult as a coach, especially when you start to have a success and you have a formula that's starting to work for you, that you say, well, this formula's worked and maybe it'll always work. And then you have to adapt it over time. And that's part of that's the toughest part of coaching, right? Continuing to adapt, and figuring out when it is starting to get a little stale with like, okay, new generation. I need to kind of adapt a couple of things. New styles of player coming around and becoming more prevalent. I got to adapt a couple of things. It's kudos to you to continue to do that. I think that it really interesting journey, like coming from the Northeast and building a program from the bottom up and knowing what that feels like. I'm curious what are some of the things you really learned in getting the best out of kids when you have a team that had no success, doesn't know how to do that, and how you kind of get them to understand that there's possibly a finish line if they follow the process that could be really good for them. How do you kind of change that culture? Because that's a very tough thing to do.
Yeah, great question. So really what I came to, and I share with our team and I share with our staff all throughout this past offseason, and really in the past 2 weeks, I was like, that's what it is. For me, it comes down to 3 Ds, okay? We need to define our culture, what we want it to be. We need to demonstrate it, and that comes back to leadership as a verb. We need to actually, I think, especially in talking about politics, and I'm talking both sides of the parties.
Right.
I'm not getting political here, but
right.
I think way too many people are given a title and they just sit back and think, I've got the title now. They got to do the work, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. Once we were blessed with a title, that's when we need to roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty and get to work. So I think we've got to define our culture, demonstrate it, and that's an ongoing process. And where I started to fall short, Coach, was demand it. The whole saying, like, everyone's in the same boat. Yeah, but not everyone was rowing in the same direction. And we had some people just along for the ride, just kind of hands back, just kind of watching everyone work. And And as great as it sounds to say, hey, we get 144 young men in our program or 70 young men or whatever it is, I think most coaches would agree when it comes down to it, I'd rather have 40 of the right guys, 40 of the right people, and maybe not even the best. We shared with our team yesterday, I'm not looking to start the best 11. As crazy as it sounds, we had a new young man on our team who I know is going to be a stud. But he was looking at me kind of like, am I in the right school, And I said, looking to start the right 11 for us. And that means, what do you do when you don't have the ball? If you're a backside wide receiver and we're running option to the other side, what are you doing? What's your effort look like? What's your focus? But you're absolutely right. Yeah, I fell short on that. And the first thing I said yesterday in our first team meeting, once I introduced our coaching staff, I looked at every young man in the eye and said, I apologize. I'm sorry. And I wasn't just saying it to say, but I said, I failed you guys. I said, last year, I said, I kind of lost my way a little bit and I got too loose on certain things. And it was empowering for them and for me just to be like, listen, that's what a man does. When you mess up, you're transparent about it. You own it and then you move on. And I think as a culture, one of the things we have to do is, along with those three things, I found out, Coach, that for me, I know culture's never been a nice slogan or word or logo you have on your weight room wall or locker room wall or t-shirt. Those are nice. But culture is a living, breathing organism. And I really came to understand that when I first took over the head coaching job at Coronado, because we have here in San Diego on Coronado Island, we have what they call North Island, and that's the naval base. Now, I hate our government, but I love our military. I support them fully. And the naval base, it's a blessing. However, it's a challenge because it's a revolving door of families coming and going.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll hire a coach. I'm like, listen, this young man's in the Navy. He's going to be in for 8 years and he wants to coach with us. He's got experience playing or whatnot. And then a year or two later, he's getting transferred somewhere else over to Japan or wherever it is. Same with players. So what it's really helped me to do is to understand that culture is never done. It's a living, breathing organism. Once again, it's going to be watered and nurtured and pruned. Sometimes you got to cut some branches off to be successful. And that's where I really think my biggest deficit is I've done everything in my life with my heart. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I show my emotions. And some people see that as weakness. For me, I don't. That's who I am. But I let that get the better of me where I had too soft of a heart for certain players that weren't all in. Now, I'm still going to fight for them, and I'm still going to help bring them along. But at a certain point, like the old adage, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Yes, at a certain point, and sooner than later, I'm going to have a sit-down conversation with a young man that I think may not be all in, find out where his heart is, what his why is, what his desire is, and then say, listen, I will do everything in my power to help you get there, but dang, you got to do 90% of the work. Like you got to be willing to get dirty yourself. So.
Yeah. And I think, Coach, I think that's something too, that you have that relationship with your players where you have the ability to kind of have those tough conversations, right? And, I've said it forever. If I truly care about a player, like, that's why I'm so hard on you, right? Because I see 100%. What you don't see. And, sometimes, when you care about that player enough, and maybe it's not that conversation that he wants to hear, but you have to have it. And it's only because I care that I'm willing to share it with you. I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm not going to, tell you something that's not true. Like, I'm going to give you that hard truth. Whereas most times I feel like sometimes a lot of guys are just willing to kind of like, they don't want to make waves, right? Like they don't want to cause anything, whatever. Yeah. But if you truly care about your players, they deserve that truth from you where they might not get it from some other people.
Amen. And you said two things there, Coach, if I can just kind of, not that it needs adding to, but just my thought here is the R word. Relationships. For me, that is 99% of success in life. Now, I've seen you guys on social media as well. It's the first time I'm ever talking to you guys. Already, I'm like, these are my guys. Like I feel like you meet certain people. You're like, I could go out and hang out, go sit by a bonfire with these guys, just talk about life or whatever. I think it's about relationships with our spouses, with our children, in jobs. When we have players that know, coaches always talk about, hey, they'll run through a wall for me. Well, you better be able to willing to run through that wall first for them if they're going to run through that wall for you. And I think when you build relationships and you understand what makes each of the young men or young women tick and what their motive is and what drives them, you can help them to be successful on and off the field. And I tell our staff all the time, if the only thing we do is help build better football players, we're failing them miserably. We need to hang up our whistle.
100%.
And once again, Coach Schuman, did I pronounce that right, Schuman?
Yeah.
You know this better than I do as far as the recruiting world, even though I've coached for 27 years. But when I say not everyone's going to play college football, well, it's less than 6%, or even less than that,
5% or something. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
So we've got to empower our young men to, hey, be where your feet are. Your girlfriend issues, your parent issues, the grade issues, the school, all the homework, that will be there when practice is over. And tell our staff as well, for these next 2 hours or 2.5 hours, let's be where our feet are, give everything we've got. And I think that's a huge part of building the culture also, is realizing that, hey, we all have, everyone we know in our lives, either us personally or our loved ones, are battling some sort or form of anxiety or depression or loneliness or hurt or whatever. Let's come together for these next 2 hours, 2.5 hours, put all that aside, become the best program we can be. And when it's over, have those private conversations and meet with each other as players and coaches to help navigate through life.
Absolutely. And my defensive coordinator in college, Nick Rapone, he used to have that exact thing before we had these fences around our field, and none of us on defense were allowed to go inside those fences until we were all ready and put everything aside that we had going on. And as soon as you felt we were all had that done, then we go onto the field. And every practice we did it. We'd walk up there and we get to the top of the hill, and we went on as a unit, and we weren't until he saw everybody was ready to go. We didn't go on to the field. That's exactly was his philosophy. It was, listen, I have you for those well, back then it was probably 2.5 hours, but maybe 3.
Absolutely.
Might have been 3, but whatever that length of time was that we were on the field, he wanted you to be locked in and focused on what you had to do, and didn't want you, in there if you weren't doing that. And I think it's a real important thing. And it's very hard, with all the distractions they have today that are mounted on top of the young kids, and that message has to be driven home when they come in. Because, I would say, you think about it like this. That's awesome that you can go out in the field and not worry about anything else for 2 hours. You have 22 hours of the day to worry about all the other things that are going on. And for these 2 hours, you can just put all that aside. You don't have to worry about any of it, and focus on what you have to do on the field. And I think that teaches you also, when you have to go and work, and you have to get prepared for a meeting, and you have to, or you're in business and you got to sell a client. Like, you have to be locked into what you're doing. And if you're not locked into what you're doing, then you're not going to have the same level of success that you could possibly have. And I think that goes for, kids, that goes for us. I mean, as adults, there are days where I didn't lock in when I'm supposed to do something, and it's not as a productive day as the day before or the day after when I was locked in. And you're not just your production, but your enjoyment in what you're doing. And that's one of the other things, is like, you feel a satisfaction of accomplishment when you lock yourself into what you need to get done, and you're focused in that area, because it's a really, really a unique thing. You get yourself in that zone, and when you're there and you walk away and you're like, oh, you know what? I accomplished something today.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You feel a lot better about it.
And then you're trying to stack those wins as much as you can.
Exactly. And that's what I was saying. I was talking to someone just a few days ago about building mental toughness. And I think that's what's stacking those wins. And I brought up the reference of, and I share with our guys all the time, the greatest weight, in my opinion, in the weight room is that 2.5 pound plate, that tiny little one. Because just like the focus of getting 1% better every day, I think most of us fail at our goals because we have such lofty goals, and 2 weeks go by and we're not there yet. I haven't lost 40 pounds in 2 weeks, and man, I really want to be down 40 pounds. Focus on 1% better every day. When I perfect a lift, a dead, a clean, a squat, whatever it is, instead of throwing 45s on again when I'm already at my max, throw on a 2.5. Throw on a 2.5 and just stack those wins and allow yourself to do it with the same form and focus and effort and energy and explosion. And I think that's what I'm using air quotes here, but the secret is in life is stacking those little wins that build the mental and physical and emotional toughness.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of people kind of fail at it, right? Like they set these lofty goals that are so like, that's great when you get there, but the journey, and I think like, the kids that we're working with now, like they're a different type of kid, right? Like they've lived in an instant type of era where everything they get is instantaneously. So when you're talking about trusting the process, in order to get that lofty goal, you have to set wins where they feel like they've accomplished something on that journey. And I think that's where a lot of guys fail, is because, they kind of set it too far ahead where they're
Yep.
not going to get that gratification that they're so used to getting, quote unquote, instantaneously. But if you set those little goals along the way and they feel like now they're winning, and I compare it to, when you're trying to lose weight, the first time someone says, hey man, you losing weight, you're jacked up and you're
Yes.
ready to go. And that next workout's probably going to be one of your best ones, because now something, you've gotten some type of reward for the work that you've put in.
Absolutely. Speaking of weight, I feel like I'm the perfect weight for someone that's 9 foot tall. Problem is I'm only 6'2", but if I were 9 feet tall, I'd be the perfect.
Yeah.
I'd be perfect
Well, you
weight.
two guys are 6 foot. I only ever wanted to be 6 foot, 5'8", and like, two whatever. God help me. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, I think that's a really big, the stacking the wins, and then how you responding to loss and responding to failure is such a critical thing to talk about how you help your athletes, because I think one of the things that kids are told these days, like that, for some reason a lot of them have it in their head that failure is a bad thing. It's like it's a roadblock, right? And it's not a roadblock. I think if it's something that you have to climb over, not something that you have to go around. You got to climb over that loss and figure out how you're going to do that so you get to the other side, right? So it's very, very difficult for them because they see how people treat people who fail at something or lose in a game, or they watch it on TV where announcers are like, oh, so-and-so coach hasn't won enough games and that guy's got, and they see so much because negativity sells way better than positivity.
Yep.
Much better. Like if I go on and I
Definitely get more clicks, that's for sure.
Yep.
criticize something that somebody does, a lot more people are going to watch it, okay, than if I go and say, wow, this is so awesome that this someone does. And how do you help them understand that failure is part of the process? What are some of the things that you work with your kids on from that standpoint?
Yeah, great question. And I agree with you 100%. I think, and I believe this to my core because I've lived through it my own life. For years, I thought failure and success were complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And the more I've matured and grown, and I'm still, work in progress, I realize they're intertwined. It's stacking our successes is embracing our failure. Embrace our failure, stack our success, embrace our failure. One of the ways we help our guys do it, and I preach this all the time, two things. Yesterday, at one point, we did our conditioning test yesterday, first day of August. We did our conditioning test. It was towards the tail end of it, and the guys were gassed. They were working hard. They were doing great. Very proud of them. But at one point, I gave them a little bit extra break. I said, guys, bring it in for a second. I said, finish this for me. I said, failure is not, and that's what I said, failure is not. And they all go, an option. I'm like, how many of you believe that? And almost all of them raise their hand. I'm like, that's the biggest lie. I said, look around. I said, the world's filled with failures. I said, quitting's not an option. Quitting's not an option, And I said, guys, take pride in the fact that you're not quitting, because some of you will. Some of you will quit. This is too hard for you. Don't lie to yourself. Just say, hey, I'm not passionate about it. But I think one of the things also that we need to do as coaches is, yes, we need to be hard on our players, but we're not the military. We don't need to break them down to build them up. I think the words we use have a lot of power. I really do. I plead with our players, please fail today. And they look at me, I'm like, listen, the more we fail Monday through Thursday and learn from it and recorrect it and rework our steps or our placement or get off, whatever, or finish, whatever it is, the more we fail Monday through Thursday, the less we're going to fail on Friday night when it counts, And I think we also need to embrace our failures in that, just like we celebrate our successes, embrace our failures for what they are. They're a stumbling block that's going to hold me back for the rest of my life, or they are a stumbling block that I'm going to, like you said, I'm going to get over, and I'm going to look back and like, listen, I've failed a bunch of times, but not once has it stopped me. I've won 100% of the battles I've fought in life. Now, I've not won every game. I've not had the ability to get every job I applied for. But when I say I've won 100% of the challenges, it means I'm still here. God hasn't taken me home yet. I'm still on the right side of the dirt. And whatever challenge I face hasn't killed me yet. And understand that, listen, all the hard times you face are part of your journey and not something to be run away from, but something to truly embrace. And I love also when I see a player fail, I really make sure, and I hate when I use the word my. So I always correct myself. Our staff, our coaching staff, our program, I tell our staff, like, if a young man messes up in a game and you feel it's imperative to pull him out right afterwards, you dang well better have him back in within the next play or two, because he's going to be, no matter what you think he's saying, he's going to be stewing over that failure and not allowed to go back in there. I love when I see a player fail in a game sometimes, and I'll scream, get his attention. I'm like, you're good. Calm down. You're good. You're good. And when we have a change of possession and I can talk to him, or at halftime, whatever it is, then you coach him up more. Or if it's crucial, you need to do it in that moment. Like I said, put someone in there.
Put him right back in.
Put them right back in and let them be successful again. Because if not, they're going to be stewing on that failure.
100%. And I always thought like that was the greatest thing about football and the game itself, was you can make a mistake and then you literally have 45 seconds and you get to have an opportunity to correct yourself and change it, right? And that was one of the biggest appeals to me, and how I coach the guys is, look, you can't dwell on that play, right? And it's like, I love when I see coaches that complain about referees and calls and things of that nature, right? And they're still stewing on the holding call when it's already the next series. Like, I've never seen a ref very rarely pick up a flag and change his call and like just move on to the next play. Right. Even when players like they get fired up, right? And they want to, like, fight after a play. It's like, man, you have the next play to go and knock that guy down if you really want, right? Like, in the right way. Yeah. So I just thought about football. Like, it's the easiest, like, it's like an Etch-a-Sketch, right? Like, we can erase it real quick, get it back out there and go.
Yeah. And I think it's great. I think so often as coaches, we preach that we want to help raise better young men and young women, but then we don't teach them about a life of balance. And we brag about how my family doesn't see me during the season, all that nonsense. And that's why I think you have more coaches that are chasing championship rings and losing their wedding ring. And there's got to be balance there. But I tell our young men in the weight room, if I ever ask you to do a certain lift and you don't know how this applies to you on the football field, ask me. And I should be telling them first and foremost how it will transfer. But if you don't know, if you weren't there that day, ask me. And the same thing in life. Like, if I hold on to a fight with my wife and we have some stupid argument, and we've been married for 30 years, she's my best friend. We've had some stupid fights. Probably 99% of them have been stupid. But what's really stupid, in my opinion, is holding on to that fight. Listen, if there's an issue, we need to sit down. No one else, no distractions, no TV, nothing. Just sit face to face, talk about it, learn from it, and let it go. Move on. And I'm not saying bury it, address it, learn from it, and move on.
Correct.
And hopefully, the things that we're teaching in the football field are going to help them, be champions on and off the field. More importantly, on the off the field part.
Yeah, I think going back to what we were talking about, the willingness to fail, right? Willingness to take the chance, because I think that, like, greatness becomes from taking the shot that at the end of the game, from trying to make a difficult play and make it happen, and taking those chances, those opportunities, and not shying away from it. You know what I mean? I think those are big things that kids have to learn, is that you can take that chance. It's funny because, like, I see this a lot of times in like with running backs, for example. If a team runs a very structured system where the running back has to hit a certain hole, you know what I mean, and he doesn't hit the hole the exact way, but he breaks off a big run, there are coaches that'll get really upset about the fact that he didn't hit that hole, instead of saying, hey, okay, this is the pre-designed hole, but you were an athlete, you took a chance, and you made a play.
Yes.
So you don't, because what you end up coaching over time is that kid will never take that risk for the home run, right? He'll just keep grinding it in there for those 6 yards, instead of, you know what, if you see it, listen, here's where the hole is, here's where it's designed to go. And if you see a home run opportunity and you take that chance, go for it. If you take that chance and you get tackled for a loss, or you make a mistake, and you were wrong on it, know that this hole right here is designed to get you yards consistently, right? So you want them to be able to take those chances, but also know what, here's where the stack to wins is. Here's where the home run is. We want you to be able to do both, right? We want you to stack wins, understand the process that gets you there, right? First downs get you there. At the same time, we want you to be a playmaker. We want you to take a chance when you see an opportunity, take advantage of an opportunity. And I think that's a thing like that goes, one of the lessons that players can learn with that in life is like, there are times when you have to put your head down and get 3 yards. There are times when that has to happen. And there are times where 3 yards is available, but you can get 60 yards if you make another decision, right? And you have to be able to kind of learn how to make those decisions, just like you learn to make those decisions in life. Just because that woman over there is the prettiest woman in the room doesn't mean that she's going to be right for you. But I'm not telling you not to go talk to her. I'm not telling you not to go talk to her. Okay, you can go talk to her and find out, and maybe she is. Maybe you are that guy for her. So, and those, but if not, that woman over there, that's pretty good looking and probably is right for you. Okay, and it'll build a family with you for the long run. Might be the right. And I think those things are really difficult things for young men to learn. And I love the way that you kind of approach the stuff. What is it about working with young athletes and football players that makes, like, what is it that makes football players so special when what is it that you really love about it?
Gosh, great question. I think it's different for everyone. I remember years ago when I was coaching in New Hampshire, I'd gone to one of the shrine dinners for some of the All-State players, and 2 young men got up back to back, not from our program, from a different program, and one was a fullback, Mike linebacker, 240, just solid. And he was talking about what he loves about football. He's like, I just love to hit people. He didn't sound like the smartest guy, but he was like, I just love to hit, said his little thing. It was great point. Next young man that got up was a running back from a different program who was tiny, all-state running back as well, but tiny. And he talked about his favorite part was making people miss, And I think that's one of the great things about coaching is our job, in my opinion, once again, not an expert or a guru, but my opinion, our job is to meet the players where they are, find out where they want to go, help their desires match their work ethic, and then help them get somewhere farther than they ever thought possible. So I think we've got to find out what makes them tick. Why are you here? We ask the players all the time, and I tell our staff, be prepared at any moment. If I ask you in front of everyone, like, what's your why? Like, why are you here? Coronado is not the ghetto. There's a lot of, I can't afford to live on islands. Yeah, I live off island. There's a lot of very well off, not everyone, but a lot of well off people. Players aren't trying to get out of Coronado. And there are a lot of places throughout the country where those young men are trying to get out of somewhere. Like this is their ticket, literally, to save their life, to get some type of other life experience.
We talk about that all the time.
Like, listen, whatever it is for you, I said, the fact that your parents have more cars in their driveway than they have drivers in their home, the fact that you have a home and a beach house and a whatever, not your fault. That's great. Celebrate that. But that's working against you a little bit. And to get to them, understand that for some of you that were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, some of you, your parents are raising you the right way. They're still teaching you the value of a dollar and teaching you how to earn something and be respectful. Some of you are given everything and you have a long way to go because they expect everything. Well, what do you mean I'm not starting? My dad owns his own business. And they don't say those words, but you can see in their eyes. What do you mean you're not starting me? I only miss practice on Wednesday because I got into a fight with my girlfriend. I'm like, well, that's why you're not starting on Friday because you missed Wednesday. But I think it's our job as coaches to find out what makes them tick once again and help them to. I think that's the biggest difference I've noticed over the years is everyone still says they love football, but the actions don't match as much as the words or the posts. And I'm guilty. I'm a social media whore, whatever you want to call it. I'm on there, all the time. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think we've got to make sure in life, not for clicks or likes or any of that nonsense, but we got to make sure that our words, our actions, our posts, our videos match who we are off camera. One of the best compliments I received from a player several years ago, I had some post that went viral. So the local San Diego news came by and they did a little segment and they pulled over. They said, Coach, can you send over any players to just chat for a minute? So I sent over 2 of our captains and I confirmed they were done with me. I went back to practice and I didn't see it till it aired later that night. But one of our young men, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said, what the world gets to see on social media, we get to see every day with coach. And for me, that meant the world to me, because once again, I'm not better than any other coach. I know who I am. I know my strengths, and I know where I've got to pick up my game and get a lot better. But it was great to hear a player that had played for us for 4 years going to a senior year that knew that I was a man of my word, that I wasn't someone different on or off camera. And I think that goes a long way too in helping our young men to succeed, is being transparent with them. And there have been times where I've gone there because I have a loved one that's sick or whatever it is. And during COVID that year, our youngest daughter had something. We never found out what it was. She's great. She's healthy now. But she had something where she had to be rushed to the hospital. My wife called me. I was at work. Couldn't go to the hospital because we weren't allowed in. So I'm like, oh my God, Jill. And my wife was like, Kurt, just go home. I was, Jill, I have practice. She's like, you don't need to go to practice. I'm like, Jill was still going to be at work, so I would have gone there for her. Sophie, our daughter, was in the hospital that we couldn't go in and see. So I went to practice, and I told our young men, I said, this is the situation. And I started crying in front of them. And I was like, let me make this very clear. I'm not telling you that I'm here because I'm that dedicated as a coach or that football means that much to me. I'm here because I can't go to the hospital and be there with her right now. And I need to be where my feet are. So I told them, I said, right now, guys, I'm going to do the best I can to be where my feet are. And we'll take care of my daughter when I can get there and see her. And I think it was a great lesson for them to be like, hey, listen, we're all going through something. And we can use that as an excuse to miss practice or to miss work or to cheat on our spouse or whatever it is. Or we can be like, listen, yeah, sometimes life sucks. Sometimes life punches you in the face. How are we going to respond to that?
There's no doubt about it. And the individual aspects of football and treating every player, understanding what each person's situation is and what's going on with them. And you could have kids that are, very poor that have stable environments. And you could have kids that are very poor that have bad environments. You could have kids that are really wealthy and have bad environments.
Yeah.
And that you could have kids that are really wealthy that have stable environments. Right. And getting to know the individual athletes. And I think that's one of the things that I think is great about football is that it's very inclusive. There's so many sports, and most sports probably have some form of cutting system where they're cutting because there's if there's too many players on the team, it's not able to function, right? And that's the beauty of football over probably any other sport. I mean, other than individual sports where you're playing them individually, from a team sports standpoint, there's no cutting in football. And I always say, like, every once in a while I hear some, I guess in the South, there's so many guys that want to play football still. There's some places that do have like some level of cuts. But I always think to myself, like, football should never have cuts. That's the beauty of it. Figure out what level they belong on, whether it's varsity, JV, sophomore team, freshman team, if you have enough kids available. But there should be no cutting in football because that's what makes football different than every other team sport. That even though there's 11 guys that go on the field, there's 11 guys for offense, there's 11 guys for defense. Each special team, there's 11 guys. Theoretically, you could use 50, 55, 60 guys in high school if you have them, right? So, and if they're all willing to work and they're all doing the things that are necessary, you have that opportunity. And I think that's the greatest thing about football is inclusivity of every person. And that's what makes a football team so unique too, when you have all the different personalities, races, whatever it is, right? All working together, different backgrounds. And that's what makes football so unique over every other sport. And I think as time has gone on away from the concussion, like the whole thing around concussions about, I guess, maybe 10 to 15 years ago, which started to create a decline and in football. What I think is football is slowly starting to find its way, right? And there are some things rules wise that like old school guys like me are like, but I understand some of these things in the sense that the longevity of football, like, would I like some of the things to be a little more physical than they once were? Sure, absolutely. But at the same time, I understand, like, my whole thing is, hey, if we could all keep getting kids to play tackle football at some point, more and more kids continue to do that and come back from where we were by creating different things, even if that means they play flag football when they're younger, some of them, or I think of it all as potentially a positive thing, because it doesn't matter what my personal opinion is of flag or 7-on-7 or tackle. My objective is that they're all playing football and they like the experiences. They'll try tackle at some point. They'll
Exactly.
try it. And once they try it, if they do like it, if they do like the physicality, you get a win there for football. And I think I'm starting to see it's slow, but the potential in certain places to be able to incline on football, whereas they literally tried the concussion thing, and I understood it all, but it was like an attempt to me by a large group of people to try and shut down football. That's what I looked at. They took this guy found, what I'm saying, what he found out and said, this is our opportunity to get rid of football. And we've really worked hard, and coaches have done a great job of working towards rebuilding all that kind of stuff. What are your thoughts on that?
Gosh, Coach, you said a lot there.
I know I did. You can choose any one thing. You don't have to choose all, because that's how I talk. I talk in these
in the best of ways. It's like, gosh, where do I start? Real quickly, I agree with you as far as like the whole defenseless player. I'm like, man, let's make football great. Let's make football violent again. Like the chop, not the chop block, but the crack block and all this different things. But I agree with you. In order to save the game, there was a big push, especially in California, try to ban football.
I heard, that was insane. Like it went to like the top levels of like, hey, we really feel like, and we're fortunate enough to have one hell of a former high school football coach as an assemblyman in Coach Benji Wimbley. I mean, so he is actually on the front lines of this entire, conversation where, and he's been on with us and he's communicated with us, he literally was saying that he had, people that were opposing these rules or wanting to ban this that had never had any interaction with football whatsoever. Yeah. So to have him on the front lines, we're kind of fortunate on this side. Not to interrupt you, Coach.
Yeah, no, it's huge, and that's a great point. My body hurts all the time. My neck is more stiff than it should be. When I sleep in my stomach, one pillow under this arm, one of this arm. I just ache. I wouldn't trade a thing. And I only played Division III college football. I wouldn't trade a thing. It literally, when I say it saved my life, it kept me in school when I was in high school. It opened doors for me to go to college, even though it was D3. It kept me in school to keep the grades up to go there. It has blessed me with meeting more people and being able to be blessed by and bless more people than I could ever imagine. And we can all hear countless stories of how it literally saved someone from taking their life or whatever it was. I think you're right, Coach Schuman, that we've got to kind of embrace. We talk about all the time, control the controllables.
Right.
I can whine and complain that they've changed the game a little bit, or I can be grateful that it still exists and make it the best that we can. And I think that's the approach we have to take is in that controlling the controllables. And for the people that want to ban football or get rid of it, I've said several times, like I could guarantee that my 4 children, who are now all young adults, never drowned in a pool. And I'm not saying this lightly for parents that have lost children at all. Never get bullied by someone, never get hit by a car, never get strung by lightning. All this. People go, no, you can't. I'm like, yeah, I could. I could have homeschooled my kids and never let them outside. And they're like, well, that's abuse. I agree. And that's not why we were born. Like life is dangerous. Life is beautiful. Life is more beautiful when you know there are inherent risks and we're not being blindly thrown to the wolves. But you're like, listen, football is a collision sport. It's a beautifully violent and violently beautiful sport. And I tell the parents, I tell the moms especially all the time, like football is a beautifully violent sport. And you see some of them smile because they get it. Their boyfriends played when they were in high school or college, or their husbands played, or they understand, or maybe they played some level of contact sport and they understand it. Life's too short, I think, to sit in the sidelines all the time. And I think that's what the people that want to cancel football or certain other things never played the sport or had a bad experience playing the sport. I think we need to be advocates for the sport in the best way we can, as you guys are doing, as I try to do, and showcase and show people all the wonderful things that are part of the game of football.
Absolutely. And there's so many things. And I think that's also
that list is crazy.
Yeah, it starts at the young levels too. Like it starts at helping the youth coaches understand what the right way to approach football is, and the right way. Everyone has different ways of teaching, but this is how, you teach tackling. This is how you approach your program in a sense of how you rotate kids and how you develop kids. And yes, if you get on a kid, you better go over and you better talk to him after that. You better build him back up, right? And you better do it quick, immediately. My whole thing is like immediate feedback. Like, I'm very big on, okay, if you're gonna get on somebody about something, because it happens as a coach, like we could all say, oh, I'm not gonna. You're gonna get fired up. There are some guys that don't yell, and I understand that, but you're gonna be fired up at some point. The key is, can you recognize it in yourself and then go back and immediately provide the feedback that's necessary, right? It's insane when people, and I've seen this from administrators just because I've been in it as a head coach, you can't, you yelled at a kid. I'm like, okay. Like, what does that mean? Like, you don't think his mom and dad has yelled at him? You don't think like at some point his boss is going to yell at him? Like he's not an egg. You know what I mean? That if you drop him, he's going to crack. But the key is, did I talk to him after? Did I immediately
100%.
put my arm around him after? Did I then explain what I'm talking about? Okay. Because you are a human being as a coach. To be a robot and think that someone's not going to be emotional in the most emotional game, other than like if you're like a boxer or, one of these sports where it's so high octane where you can kill or be killed. Outside of that, football is the highest octane sport. And it's definitely the highest octane team sport. And it's one of those things where, how do you approach the kid after? Do you immediately explain to him what has to happen? And I think parents have to understand because there are parents now that are trying football and they may not have played themselves, like their kids are playing it. They may not have played themselves, because we run flag leagues and stuff, and my son plays tackle, and I see it though when the people are new to sport, like the parents themselves don't know that much about football.
Right.
And they may not understand the emotional parts of it. But the whole thing is, you know what? Coaches can be fired up. But did that coach teach after that quick bit of fired upness? Did he build the kid up after that? If he did that, I can live with it. If he just dismisses him and the kid's sitting over there at the end of the bench crying, because he's upset because he doesn't know what he did wrong, then you know what? Yeah, that coach needs to improve that aspect of it. And it is difficult. Like as a coach, it's very difficult. But I think football has to continue to get the right people involved from that standpoint, which I think they are doing. And then administrators, which sounds like you have great administrators, by the way. Administrators have to understand how important it is for kids to understand not just positive feedback, because positive feedback is great. We love positive feedback. Positivity is contagious. Negativity is destructive. But there is negative aspects to coaching, right? There is critical components to it. Now, how does someone build somebody back up when there is a critical component to it? I think that's a really, really big thing. And football has to continue to, I think, help parents understand that this is a really important thing in life, because, man, I mean, I look at it, not to get political, because I've seen a lot of things. I kind of have an understanding of, we're probably on a similar page from a political standpoint, but I see how things get angled politically in life.
Of course.
Whether I agree with it or disagree with it, whether I agree with a candidate or disagree with it, I do see how people angle things, right? And people will angle and take advantage, and they will take advantage of people who don't stand up and say, hey, this is okay. Okay. There's a right way to handle certain things. This is okay. You're not going to just come down to me because you don't like the way that I think or the way that I act about something. Am I doing the right thing? Am I representing myself the right way? That's the most important thing. Do I have the values that are good for young people? And those are the things that are most important. But I think it's very big for administrators and people around football in general and sports in general to understand that this is what happens in life, and you can't just put them – they're not eggs. These kids aren't eggs. They'll be okay.
Yeah. Amen to everything you said. Two things. I think the most important thing you said that I resonate with is the immediately part. Now, I tell our staff all the time, you can yell all you want as a player, all you want, but make sure the words you say, you would say their parent was right there or the administrator was right there.
I love
Stand
that.
by those words. And
I love that.
Our words are power. I hate when our staff, and I reminded one of the coaches last year, it didn't happen again. And he's a great guy. Love him as a person, as a coach. But they were going from one drill to another. He's like, don't be last. I was like, oh, hey, no. And I pulled him aside. I was like, yell be first. I said, when we yell, don't be last. If I was a player, I'm looking for the fattest kid, and I'm going to try to beat him. Hey, right. Goal accomplished. I'm striving for mediocrity. Let's strive for greatness. Yell be first. And if our goal is to all be first, only one cat will be first. Only one guy's going to show up there first. But if we're all striving for that, that'll be great.
Right.
As far as getting on kids.
That's a great point. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the same thing, like glass half empty, glass half full,
yes.
right? Like, and the way you kind of pose things or word things can totally change the whole message, right? So if you go in and look, it's something that we all have to practice because for the most part, a lot of it, and it's kind of like, an old school mentality was kind of in a way negative type of coaching where it wasn't that glass half full approach, right? It was always don't be last and all that other kind of stuff. So I mean, I know myself personally, I'm constantly trying to remind myself, hey, be positive, make sure it's that type of thing, because that's how these guys respond better, right? And it's through, action and just continuously doing it over and over that now that'll become the norm for what, I personally do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, imagine me as a coach or any of us walking into the team room day one saying, guys, our goal this year is to not be last.
Right.
Right.
The administration, the parents, the community, the players, coaches would not want to be on that part of that program. If I say, hey, we don't want to be last. No, hey, our first goal this year is to win league. Once we win league, let's go on to the state championship from there. But let's win league first. That is our goal. It's the same thing. Like our words do have power. You mentioned also, Coach Schuman, as far as our kids aren't eggs. I kind of agree with that. I think as a society, I'm not going to say what party, I think they're trying to bubble wrap their kids, and they are creating a lot of eggs that are just so timid and so fragile. And it's kind of like that saying, not my own, but don't prepare your kids for, don't try to soften the world for your kids, but prepare your kids for a hard world. Like your boss is going to pull you aside at some point and say, hey, listen, I know what the contract says. I need you to perform a little bit better. I need you to stay a little bit later. I need you to come in. I was screaming at a player yesterday, one of our sophomores. Love the kid, stud. He wasn't doing as good as I knew he could. So I'm screaming at him so everyone can hear. I'll say his name because it wasn't bad. I'm like, Declan, stop dogging, stop. And he looked at me kind of like, I'm not. I said, Declan, you are. You can do better. You can be, and I'm a huge believer that competition breeds success. So I said,
absolutely.
Come on down here. I put him next to a kid that I knew was faster than him. Well, guess what? They went next to each other. The kid still beat him, but Declan beat his previous times by like 2 seconds.
Absolutely. And that's all you're looking for is those improvements, right?
Yeah.
And look, Coach Dave and I, we do a lot of the, the youth stuff and whatnot. And even myself now continuing to coach high school ball and whatnot, like that competition, it doesn't matter what you're doing. If you put that kid against another kid, both of them are going to go above what they would do if they were doing it individually, because no one wants to be the loser.
Yeah. I'll make a fairly long story very short. Several years ago, probably about 15, actually, when I was still a head coach in New Hampshire, our conditioning test is completely different now and much better. However, 15 years ago, it wasn't. We did the 110s, which I don't think are really. Yeah, they're not we don't do those anymore.
I think I still have PTSD from doing that in college.
Right? And the reason, when you know better, you do better. So we do different conditioning tests now. I want to make sure that's very clear. But one particular summer, I had one of our players say, Coach, will you run them with us this year? I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I will. So what? And then I was like, what the heck did I just say? So that was at the very end of the spring ball or spring season. So all summer, I run on strength and conditioning. We would work out, and then I would drive to a different high school, and I would run the 110s on my own. So our players didn't know. I was like, you know what? I'm going to shock them. Yeah, I was wrong, but I was running by myself, and I was completing them. Yep. I was like, I'm doing all right. Well, fast forward to the first day of camp. I was like, guys, I played tight end in college. I'm running with the tight ends and the D ends. Well, I had run all summer by myself. Now, as I'm running with our players, I'm like, I'm not going to let so-and-so beat me. I get on him all the time about being too slow. I'm not going to get – after about the 7th or 8th one, I remember praying to God like I'd never prayed before. I was like, please don't let me throw up in front of my team. Please don't let me throw up in front of my team. I made it. I didn't throw up. I finished them. But, man, my time just got lower and lower and lower. But the point of it was when I was competing with someone else, that competition pushed me. And I think as coaches, just like I did mentally and emotionally, and as far as my mindset of our culture this offseason, if we're expecting our student athletes to be students of the game, to get their nose in the huddle in the playbook and keep evolving, then by God, we got to lead by example. And they've got to see us progressing and leading as well. I have a coach on our staff. Our staff ranges from 19 to 77.
It's amazing.
Coach Mike Pompa has coached, I think, for 48 years. He's been a high school coach for years. He was a college head coach for years. Now he shuffles along the field. He works out every day. It's a very slow jog that looks like a walk. He swims every day. The guy's a legend, in my opinion. But he shuffles all across the field. He's not going to impress any of the players right now with his physical strength and ability, although he used to be a stud. But what he does is he impresses them with his commitment and his attitude and his coaching and his love. And he gets on them hard. But like you said, Coach Schuman, also, he will pull them aside always, or he likes to bring him candy bars. He's like, Coach, I got hard on so-and-so today. Don't you worry. I'm going to bring him candy bar tomorrow. And I'm like, Coach, you don't need to bring him candy bars. I'm going to bring him candy bar and make sure he's okay. But he understands the importance of building those relationships. And the more we build those relationships with no hidden agenda, the better we all are.
That's definitely the key. I mean, building the relationships is so important. And one of the things I heard, which is great, and I always try to do it, even if I make a mistake on it, I immediately try to catch myself if I recognize it, is you tell them what you want them to do, not what you don't want them to do. So it's like, don't do that, don't do X again, or don't step with that foot. No, tell them what foot to step with. Step with the right foot. Yes. Don't tell them don't step with the left, because what they're going to do is they don't
step with the left.
They don't hear the don't. They step with the left, right? So that's always a thing. And it's when you're moving fast and you're coaching, sometimes you make the mistake of saying the don't because it's in your head. But the thing that really gets them to learn is to get them to understand what the standard is, what they're supposed to be doing, not what they're not supposed to be doing. It's important and if you do a correction, this is what you did. You stepped with the left. You're supposed to be stepping with the right. And that's how you can explain. And I try hard to do it. I make a mistake on it. There's no doubt about it. I'm sure at least a couple times in practice I do. Yep. But it's important to be able to work towards doing that as much as possible, because I've noticed that kids, and I didn't notice it until it was told to me, kids will do what you ask them to do. If obviously the kids that are committed, right? They'll do what you ask them to do. But they'll get confused by things that if you don't communicate properly, because communication is such a big part of practice and getting kids better. And how you communicate them is the difference between them understanding to do the right thing. One of the things I like with tackling, for example, you grew up in this era too. So, we bite the ball, right? Yeah. Or I mean, back even when I was, like, Coach Harkins used to have us literally get in front of the guy. Our head would be up in his chest. You know what I mean?
Between the numbers.
Helmet under the chin, right? Like that was
here you go. Like now it's
like the weapon. Helmet under the chin. He's going down, right?
Imagine if we do that today, we'd be in prison.
Right. Yeah. So I tell my coaches, because now I'm coaching youth because my son's on the team. I tell the coaches, I know we all know what you're trying to accomplish with bite the ball and those kind of things. Your head has to be head to the side, head up. That's how you teach it, because you're actually going to accomplish those and near hip and all that kind of stuff. But you're going to accomplish the thing that you want to accomplish. But you're never going to get yourself in a situation where they take the literal wording of that. And that's what's changed a lot. And they literally put they're biting the ball because they don't understand. You want head on the side, head up, right? Near hip. And those things, those words change it, and they do it. I've noticed they do it. Yep. But if the way that I learned, which was effective back then, because you had to really be super physical in front of the guy and drive him complete. Like the whole objective was to drive him into the ground.
Yeah.
Well, now the objective is really you're doing that, but the objective is to take him to the ground, almost like a wrestler, right? It's to take him to the ground.
Do the roll, yeah.
Yeah, well, and the roll, like I'm not big on the roll,
Wrap and roll,
Same.
eyes through the thighs.
I'm not
whatever.
big on it. Like we teach it as part of what we're doing, but like when people tell me that, they have to wrap and roll, I'm like, well, there's situations where wrap and roll is not
going to work.
It's not only is it not going to work, but not necessarily the safest tackling method. Like wrap and roll, you're still bringing them on top of you. You're pulling the kid all the way through, right? So, there's sometimes when you're on the sideline and you're taking the guy, towards the sideline, hey, near hip, bring him tackle him out of bounds. You're wrapping him and you don't need the roll. You tackle him and drive him into the ground. Your head is still up. You know what I mean?
And look, no, I'm not interrupting you, Dave, but also positionally, you're going to tackle different as a D lineman than you are as a safety or a corner, right? Like when you're a D lineman, like your tackle happens now. Right? When you're a linebacker, you got a couple steps to go and make that play. But as a safety, I mean, most guys, you got a 12, maybe a 10-yard running head start to go and make a tackle in the open field, where a guy can go either way and he's going to try and make you miss. Like, what kind of tackle are you using then? Right? So I think positionally also you need to tackle, right? And then obviously, look, on game day, I tell my guys, fellas, if you miss a tackle and you come off the field and tell me, Coach, I was trying to tackle this, I don't care what you do, get him down. Like I'm going to preach the proper way, but when the bullets are flying in the middle of a game, dude, like you better get him down.
And I think also we with the best of intentions, but we overcomplicate things as coaches.
Oh my God. It's the biggest pet peeve I have is like we overcoach so much.
Well, that's one of the first things. We're going to have another coaches meeting this Saturday after our morning practice. Is one of the first things on my agenda for our staff is coach your position only.
I am
everyone's a kicker coach during PAT time. Guys, listen, we got one coach. No one else should say a thing to the kicker. No one else.
I am so sorry. I am the biggest. Like that is probably my biggest pet peeve. Look, if I'm the receivers coach, don't talk to my guys. All right, like that's it. Like I'm sorry. I am so territorial. It's probably one of the biggest cons for me personally. Like when I look at how I coach and reevaluating, I am so overprotective of my guys, right? Like in a game, a guy's like, oh, he's getting beat as a corner. He's doing this. Get him out of the game. Buddy, worry about you. Okay?
Yeah.
Worry about your guys.
It applies to the players too. I tell our quarterbacks always, I should never, I'm going to lose my crap. You should never say to the lineman, block someone.
Yeah.
Never say block for me. Because the lineman never turn around and say, hey, throw a better ball. Hey,
dude, what are you doing back there?
He was open, And I tell our staff, I'm like, listen, I don't want yes men on our staff. No. I'll never get better. I want you to contradict me. I want you to challenge me, but there's a place and time. Never during a game, not in front of the players. Say, Coach, can we go to the coach I was talking with? Hey, why are we running it this way? And I'll tell you specifically why we run it that way. Or I'll say, wow, I never thought about it. Yeah, let's try that new approach. I also say to our staff, listen, to your example, is it Coach Depascale?
Yeah, you're good.
I want to make sure I pronounce it correctly. To your point, if I'm not a receivers coach, but maybe I coach receivers at my old job, or maybe I was a receiver, whatever the situation may be, if I see you doing something different or that I don't like, wait till practice is over and say, hey, listen, I know it's why you're doing this. Because most coaches then will realize, hey, I'm not being challenged or insulted. They're just coming as a staff. We're working together.
100%.
I think it's imperative. None of us know it all.
Although I'll give a caveat that I think I'll put on it, and obviously you're a head coach, and I've been a head coach for a long time.
You're going to say safety, aren't you?
I no. My thing is this: is that if like from a position standpoint, there are a couple people that I think can go and correct the position
coordinators.
Yep.
Coordinators and head coach, but no lateral.
This way, man. Like if the head coach is coming over and saying you're doing this, hey, this is how we do it. All good, bro. You're my boss. Like, Yep.
Right. No lateral. Right. No lateral. Like, so if you're, and even if it's like, it laterally should be collaboratively, you know what I mean? Like and I think what you said is right. Like, hey, I play, and this happens. I was a wide receiver. If a guy was a wide receiver in college or whatever, and I am not the wide receiver coach, I'm coaching DBs, and then this other guy's coaching receivers, and I see him do something, and I think, well, maybe if he did this, it could help. I think you're 100% right. You go up, you talk to him after and say, hey, listen, it's up to you what you want to do, but I think this might help you if you want to look into it. But I think that's an important thing. And I do think from young coaches' standpoint, and I don't know if you deal with this at all, because it sounds like you do turn over your staff. You were saying earlier, sometimes you turn over your staff because guys leave and stuff. I think that it's important for younger coaches getting into the industry to learn how to they can have all the aspirations they want to have, but also be able to listen, because they're going to get corrected by the coordinator or a head coach.
It's a learning process,
and
man.
They can't take offense to it because
it's not personal.
Right. That's the biggest thing I've seen, that when you get a great coaching staff, it because you could correct a guy in the staff and he doesn't immediately take offense to it.
Right. Or start defending himself. Like, oh, well, It's like, look, man, we're all right. But I do believe in the fact that a lot of that stuff, optics wise, right? It's sometimes when you see coaches go back and forth like that it's just a bad look, right?
Yeah, I agree.
It's not a good look. But I am totally on board with 100%. There's no lateral coaching or, and special teams, because that's kind of like my thing. That always gets a little hairy, but you have to lay that out in terms of, look, there's a special teams coordinator, but this coach works with this guy works with this guy, and then everybody's coaching, everybody knows their role. And I think that is the perfect, when you have that, now you can cook with gas.
Exactly. And I think it's important as head coaches, and I failed so many times as a head coach, especially my first few years, because once again, when you know better, you do better. I didn't know then what goes into it. I make sure, and I think all head coaches should, 2 or 3 weeks prior to spring ball, I send an email out to the entire staff and say, here's our current 2024 staff. If there's any additions or someone left, here are your coaching responsibilities off season, during season, Friday nights, and let them know what their expectations are. And for each of every program does it differently. Sometimes they have a special teams coordinator. What I've found more successful for us is I have one coach in charge of kickoff, one coach in charge of kick return. And I tell them, make this your baby. Even as the head coach, I want you to explain it to me. I want you to tell it to me.
You are the head coach of this group.
Exactly. And gives them skin in the game. Because I've been
and then now they feel a certain type of way, right? And I do the same thing with breaking it down positionally per special team. Now those guys, hey, I'm coaching the gunners. All right, let's go. Hey, I got the personal protector, right? I feel like that gives them even more of a personal relationship with our kids, because most times those guys aren't coaching those kids throughout the day, right? Sometimes it's just a different way to get every coach involved with kids that normally they wouldn't be coaching.
Exactly. And I think it gives them more skin in the game. Also, I'll never mention names, but I've had some coaches on staff when Huddle first came out. I would have a coach that came in staff or come to the coach's office, and he'd be like on a Saturday morning, oh, I watched film for 7 hours last night. And I'd sit there and pop up Huddle, and I called him out on it after the second time he did it, and it says how long he'd been on, and I didn't do it in front of the other coaches. I almost just said his name, which I won't do. But I remember after one particular coaching meeting, I was like, hey, coach, can you stay around for a few minutes? So I pulled it up, I said, and it was 2 hours he had watched film. I'm like, listen, if I watch 14 hours of film and Bill Belichick watches 7, am I a better coach than him? No. I said, so don't lie about the hours. It's the quality of time. I said, our young men can click play and loop that Huddle, go play Xbox for 2 hours, and we think they're doing it. That's a whole other thing. If I can share one quick thing, what I start to do with our program is we tell as far as being students of the game, I tell our young men after a Friday night game, we have Saturday practice, just 2 hours, film and lifting, get them stretching, moving a little bit. And I know there are different philosophies on that.
Yeah, I'm in the same philosophy with that.
Nah,
Yep.
yeah, we did. That's kind of the way of the world. You know what I mean? Like,
Love it.
run with film the day after. Come on in. I know you're sore. I know it sucks. I know it's miserable. You got home late. You probably went out and did something you weren't
Yep.
supposed to do. Win, lose, or whatever. Like, you're a high school kid. You're allowed to hang out with somebody slower so you don't get caught. But hey, like, I get it. But it's
Yeah.
it's that's like kind of the Saturday thing. So we do
Yes.
the same thing.
So we have them come in, and two reasons: one, to get them moving a little bit; two, to recap the great win or the tough loss. I said two reasons, but several reasons. One, like you said, Coach Schuman, to say, hey, listen, RJ, I was really hard on you last night. The emotions were high. I needed time to reflect. I think you needed time. Let's talk about how you handled this situation. So make sure it's still maybe not as immediate, but a little bit more in depth.
Absolutely.
But as far as the film, what I tell our players is before we leave on Saturday, we give them Sundays off, always. And we don't have coaches meetings on Sundays. I give our staff off. I want them to have balance. But I say when we come in on Monday and before we start watching the next opponent's film, I call on 5 random players. And I'll say, Dave, give me your best play and worst play. And they better be able to say, and they can put it in their phone, they can tattoo it in their arm, they can write it on a piece of paper. They better say, Coach, sideline play 54 or end zone plays 53. This is what the play was. And I'll go to it, but I won't play it yet. And I'll say, tell the team what the play was, what your assignment was, why it was your worst play. And they'll break it down. And then I'll say, all right, now tell me what your best play was and why. And they know that if 3 out of those 5, we get 3 strikes. If 3 like, Coach, I don't know, then we're going to have extra conditioning. And I really, really, really try not to use conditioning as punitive, hardly ever. But hey, guys, we're all in this together, and we've all got to be rowing the boat the same way. So it helps give them some accountability and say, listen, Jack, if you only play left tackle and you don't play any defense, don't watch any defensive film. You don't have to. But watch yourself and become a student of your own execution. How well did you do? Where could you get better?
Absolutely. And I think that's a great tip. I wrote that down because they're going to want to watch themselves. So
they always do.
They do.
What do? They watch the best play. They had that one.
They watch the one play.
Highlights. Oh, look at this tackle I made in the open field.
Yeah.
Watch me.
And we all say it.
I
made a point yesterday. I'm like, listen, college coaches, if they really have interest in you, they want to see, after they've watched your highlight film, they want to see a full game. They want to see how are you on the backside of the play when you're not getting the ball. They're more, that shows more character.
Do you play specials? Do you give full effort as a gunner after you just, went 3 and out and now you got to line up over here? Like, what do you do? Or like you said, Coach, backside, like when the play's going away from you, are you working your hips to get in front of that guy as a receiver and block? Are you the corner that, listen, Dave and I can reference a play. We had a play when we were coaching together a couple years ago where, they kind of blocked a kick and they were out and they were gone, right? Like the kid was gone. And one of our guys, and I'll mention his name, Nick Ferragime, he plays at Salve Regina right now, amazing kid, but not like, nothing really incredible. He chased this guy down from after being on the ground as the backside wing. And hawked him. And then what happens in the next couple of plays? We force the 3 and out, and then we block a kick, right? So, it just all correlates. Like, that's the stuff. And I told him, I said, that play right there, man, will literally get you recruited.
Did you say his name was Nick?
Nick, yes.
And Nick, hopefully he's listening. I obviously don't know Nick, but just when you describe that play about being down in the dirt, down on the turf, whatever the field was, and then just going and straining to get there, that's a young man that's going to fight for his country, fight for his wife, fight for his family. That's someone that's going to do good things in this world.
No, he's a great kid. And
was that kid?
A fantastic kid. And that's exactly who he is too. I mean, he also had the greatest beard ever for a high school kid.
Phenomenal. He was buying beer in 7th grade.
I'm like, how do you have a beard like this at high school? I mean, a phenomenal.
Have you been at the liquor store since 7th grade? Like, no, you've never been carded in your life.
How do you have a great beard like that at that age? I'm like, good golly, it's fully grown and everything.
Hell of a basketball player too.
Yeah,
so like he just he encompassed everything. But those are the kids and those are the plays that you like as a coaching staff. That's the stuff that you need to, look, touchdowns are great. All that other stuff is great. But look at the hustle play that this guy made, right? Or a lineman chasing down somebody like, backside, just pursuit. Like that stuff shows just like what you're really made of. And that's like why this game is just great because, you're not always going to be the star. Most times you're not, right? Like, I always say the most important guy in the field is the center, because without a snap, we don't get a play. Nobody thinks of that guy, or the long snapper, right? Like, nobody knows that guy's name until something goes bad. Like, those stuff is all important. Everybody can play a pivotal role in football and be a part of something that's bigger than you. And that's life.
Yeah, and those are the clips that I love showing to our program, and I think all great coaches do. Is everyone sees the touchdowns, everyone sees the TFL, everyone sees the big sack, everyone sees the strip, but when you can be like, listen, Timmy here only plays on PAT, right guard, but look at his step. He stepped inside, he slammed his foot to the ground, he spread his arms out, celebrating sometimes not our studs, and celebrating the ones that give that thankless effort, or that, hey, the play was dead. It was a home run. It was a touchdown, but because of his effort, he stopped him on the 2-yard line. That's the stuff that I think empowers those individuals and continues to build the culture of what you're trying to create.
100%.
Absolutely. I want to ask a couple of questions on leadership, because you're so great with it. What is it like from a time a kid comes into your program, like as a freshman, that you try to build with them to really get them to become a leader in their own right? Everybody's different. Some people are, more natural than others, but so they have, each athlete has some level of leadership role on the team. What are some of the things you do to really build that?
Yeah. Two things that come to mind right away is, one is I tell our team all the time, everyone's a leader. And you can see the smirks, because they're like, so-and-so's not a leader, so-and-so smokes pot all the time, or so-and-so drinks all the time. So, I'm like, listen, you're all leaders. And I'm a firm believer in that. And then I dive a little deeper and say, the question is, who are you leading and where are you leading them? Because after a big win or a tough loss, some of you are going to go home, get a pizza, have some burgers or dogs, and watch the highlights on local news station. Some of you are going to go to a party and get hammered, and some of your teammates are going to follow you there. So who are you leading and where are you leading them? The second thing is, it happened yesterday during a condition test. We have this new freshman who I'm very excited about, big kid. A little bit too big, a little bit too heavy, but he's a freshman who, just before the halfway mark of our conditioning tests, which are no longer the 16 110s, but different tests, you could see his time get slower and slower and slower. And it was day one of meeting him. He just moved to our town. I hadn't met him during the summer, but I could already see in his eyes that he was giving up on himself. So what I did to one of our other linemen, a returning part-time starter, but he'll be a starter for us this year, he said, Stanley, go help Alex out. And he looked at me and said, what do you want me to do? I'm like, just let him know he matters. Just speak from your heart.
Just be there.
Yeah, exactly. So he went over to him, talked to him for a second. I kind of gave him a thumbs up. So the young man didn't know that I sent him over there. At the end of practice, I called Stanley up to the coach's office. So, hey, how'd it go? What'd you say to him? And then he just told me what the conversation was. I said, make him your pet project, that when you come back as an alumni and he's a sophomore or junior or a senior, and he's dominating, you can say, I helped that young man not quit day one of his freshman year. So I think one of the ways we build leaders is, just like we stack successes, is sometimes we have to lead that horse to water and say, hey, listen, I see you as a leader. Let me help you become a better leader. And we talked about our culture yesterday. I put on the board 4 words that define who we are as a culture, and then broke down how that applies and shows up on the football field, and how that shows around the school campus, around our community, what that looks like. So I think what we have to do, I think cocky, arrogant, self-absorbed leaders are afraid to create more leaders within their coaching staff. They don't want to delegate too much.
They don't want threats, right? Like, they don't want anybody coming after them or taking their spot. They're almost being a captain in a sense of like fear almost, right? Like, because they're scared to be challenged, or they're scared to, kind of go all in on it because somebody might be better, or might be, a better captain or something of that nature.
And those same head coaches, in my opinion, when you take from the head coach point, they'll hire qualified coaches, but not great coaches. Because, man,
not somebody that could possibly,
make me sound like I don't know it all, So I think what we need to do as coaches, if we consider ourselves servant leaders, if we consider ourselves transformative coaches, what we need to do is surround ourselves with other great coaches, not micromanage, let them coach, teach them our culture. This is how we talk to the players. These are the words we'll never use. Here are the words we will use, and then let them run with it. And with our young men, back to your question, Coach Schuman, with our young men, I think we have just like we tell our players, have your head on a swivel, watch for that crack block, whatever it is. I think what we need to do is look for opportunities to empower our leaders to help them become better leaders and help them take pride in what they're doing with that.
100%.
Yeah, I think that I think well, there's a couple of things I think that were really important. I agree with most of that stuff. The one thing that I think is interesting is with staffing and being a coach and having been a head coach where I've had great staffs, and I've been head coaches where I had guys that I'm going to have to move out, and I hired them, right?
Yep.
And I mean, Derek was with me when first year I would argue most of our staff was bad. And the second year, even though we were good, the team was good. The next year, the team was not as good, but our staff was much better. So I think a big part of it too is I think the biggest part of coaches is getting guys that are loyal to what you want. They don't have to agree with you on everything, but loyal to what your mission is.
100%.
And I think you want to hire the best coaches that you can that fit your organization, because sometimes as a head coach, and I've had experience with this many years ago, I hired a guy who I thought was just a fantastic offensive coach, and he didn't want to listen to anybody other than himself, right? And I thought, wow, this guy is a great offensive coach, great reputation, and he was highly detrimental to the program. So because he wasn't loyal, the only person he was really loyal to, he was loyal to himself.
Right. Me guy. So, that doesn't work in football.
That doesn't work either, right?
So I think as a me coach, you can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, he listen, and if you were to sit with him and talk X's and O's and talk who could do, I mean, because I was an assistant coach with him before, I was we were lateral kind of, maybe I was a coordinator and he was a position coach, but he was really smart. And I was like, I got to get this guy, right?
Yeah.
And it was a mistake by me. And I learned a lesson as a young coach. It was my second head coaching job, and I was like 33 years old or 32 years old. And I learned immediately, as soon as I hired him and was basically a couple weeks in, I knew it already. But now you know how it is, especially if you teach at a public school, like, getting that guy out of there.
You can't go back and you can't go get somebody. It's not like you can just pick somebody up like a waiver wire. It's not a waiver wire.
Right. Well, he lasted 2 years in my program, and I was the one that hired him. So it was my. So one of the things I learned was the number one thing is that they're loyal, not just to you, and doesn't mean they have to agree with you on anything, but they're loyal to the program and doing the right thing and loyal to what your objectives are. And they could disagree with you. They could have their own mind. Obviously, you want them to be able to challenge you where they can and make the team better. But that loyalty to me is always such an important thing. And I'll take a guy that's willing to learn and loyal versus a guy who knows so much more and is only concerned about himself. But ultimately, you're 100% right. You really want a balance, right? You want the guys to be loyal to you. You want as good of coaches as you could possibly get that are loyal to what you're doing, and the young guys that you bring on board that aren't maybe as knowledgeable, you want them to be enthusiastic and willing to learn. Yeah. And then you're getting the best staffs. And ultimately, I always think that the number one thing is people that care about kids, right? Because
100%.
If they care about first, in coaching, what I've noticed over the years is you get a lot of guys that say they care about the kids.
Yeah, and then they have no idea.
Don't.
You know what's funny, Coach? So I love this. I actually was blessed to speak at the Utah Football Coaches Association just a few months ago on hiring, supporting, and empowering your coaching staff. And what you just shared summarized my whole talk. But one thing I want to add to it, because I agree 100% with what you're saying, 100%, was I used to, when I first became a head coach in New Hampshire, sit down with prospective coaches and talk football, just X's and O's. And I'm like, all right, hire this guy. And I found the same thing you found. What I do now when I hire coaches, it's a 3-step process. And with respect to their time, the first time I have them come in, I set an alarm on my phone, turn it over so it's upside down for 30 minutes. And I don't talk football at all. I want to know what you're most proud of in your life, most challenges you have. Tell me about your family. There have been coaches, and they all say the right thing. I want to give back. I want to make a difference. And then if I get a good vibe of their energy and who they are, I ask them back. I don't tell it to them in an interview, but I say, hey, next Wednesday, can you stop by the weight room from 3 to 4, whatever it is? And they're like, well, yeah, what do you want me to do? whatever you want. I'm going to be working out with the guys. You can watch, you can talk to guys, whatever. And I've seen guys before who say they want to give back, make a difference, walk right past the real skinny kid, go to the studs, walk right past
go to the studs.
Go to the studs. And right there in my mind is a huge red flag. And I don't call, I'm very respectful about it. I'll let 3 or 4 days go by.
You're good. Yeah.
Reach them out and say, hey, appreciate it, but I'm going to go in a different direction. But I want to see coaches that want to coach every athlete, not just the studs that are going to make us look good. So I completely agree with you, Coach.
Absolutely. And by the way, I'm probably frozen on your screen because for some reason right, Derek, am I right? Once a podcast, I freeze. I don't know if it's my
but at least it's an okay picture. Sometimes you get frozen and we're like, oh boy. Like at least it's okay right now. And Coach, just for reference, that is not Coach Schuman's background. Like, he does not play the piano, just so everybody knows.
I'm like, listen, I know New Jersey's not cheap. I'm like, this guy's doing well for himself.
Yeah.
I definitely don't have that grand piano. If you were to see what's behind me, it's just a nice white wall. You know what I mean?
You know how many times those guys ask him, like, "Hey, Coach, can you go play a tune for us?" And we're like, "Hey, sorry, buddy."
He's just tickling the ivories.
No, yeah,
brother, it's all good.
If you want to look at a white wall, that's what I have to put. And I feel bad for anybody.
It's literally
because I'm buried in the basement, Coach. I'm buried down in the basement. That's where I get buried. I have to do everything.
Hey, so that's all right. That's all right.
No doubt about it. All right.
You still are frozen there, though. But like Coach said, it's not a bad mugshot at all.
No, you look all right. You look all right.
Goodness.
All right, yeah. So then it'll come back, but like, Coach, I really appreciate you taking the time, especially because you're in the middle of you've just started camp. We actually have, every school in New Jersey is mandated to have a dead week in the summer. Yep. So a lot of guys do it the week before you can really ultimately open up, and we open up so late out here. Like a lot of guys play week 0, which is truly like out of state week 1s, which is where you'll see, some of our national powerhouses like go and play teams that week. Like I think the big one this year is actually coming to Jersey. IMG is playing Bergen Catholic, who's like a national whatever.
There he is.
But so that's kind of like our schedule it's pretty crazy. But Dave coaches his son who's 9U, and they've been going for like 2 weeks already, right? Yeah. And I still have a whole nother dead week before we start up high school wise. The younger kids are getting out there and getting after it. Right. Here we are twiddling our fingers trying to figure out like, all right, better spend the time with your family this week because we all know how the season is.
But I get it. Yeah.
It's a different type of schedule.
The geniuses in California. So when the three of us were growing up, and I think I'm a little older than you guys, but I'm 30. I'm just kidding. Back when I grew up, when I grew up in Rhode Island, you had 2 weeks of doubles every single day. So there really was the hell weeks or whatever. In California now, they just started something new this year. Now I coach in Coronado Island. On the hot days, it's 80 degrees. That's not bad at all. It's usually 72 and sunny. No humidity. They just started this new season where you can only have doubles every other day. I'm fine with that. That's been a few years now. So you can't. So yesterday we had doubles. Today it's just single practice. But what they started this year is you can only be outside for one of those practices. So yesterday morning we were inside in the gymnasium, no or very little ventilation.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, it's so much worse.
It
makes no just put them in a sauna.
No sense at all. Makes no sense at all.
Listen, the gym's hotter.
The stuff that some of these guys come up with. I mean, look, Dave and I have coached at a school where we've had, certain trainers and things of that nature. I mean, we got flags like, hey, you can't be doing this when this flag is up, and hey, it's only helmets. Or I mean, we'd be walking out to practice and listen, and we were there during COVID. I mean, what an interesting process. I mean, we literally played a game, no practice all week, 20-minute walkthrough, and then these guys went out and played a game. It's like, that's safe, but hey,
then you couldn't shake hands afterwards because that was dangerous.
Oh yeah, that's right. Coach Hines, COVID finished my high school coaching career off. That was when basically administration and me were no longer on the same page. And 6 months after, maybe less than 6 months, 4 months after the season, we all agreed that that was it. And then I said, you know what? I think I'm going to start coaching my son and enjoying that part of the process.
I'll tell you really quick. During that COVID season, our athletic director, who has now retired, we have a new one now. I'll say his name. He won't hear this, but Aaron Brooks. He's phenomenal. But our old one, I won't say her name. During that time, she, prior to COVID, never popped her head in the weight room ever. During COVID, she was coming in 3 times a day. Coach, I have to pull the mask up. And then one time, she came by my coach's office, and she's sitting 3 feet, if that, 3 feet away from me, mask down, talking about a half an hour. And as we're talking, in my mind, I'm like, game on. I was like, never again will I ask any of our young men to wear a mask, because she just sat with 3 feet away from me with no mask on, but behind closed doors, so we weren't playing the game. So fast forward the following week, we're in the weight room, and one of our young men was like, Coach, and he pointed out the gymnasium door she was walking our way, and he was expecting me to say, guys, put your masks on, and I didn't. I said, guys, do what you want. You're
good. Keep going.
And she started walking towards me, and I didn't even have it dangling from my ear. And I wasn't trying to be rude or disrespectful.
Yeah.
Just kind of waved, and she didn't come into the weight room. Now, after their strength and conditioning, she was up by my coach's office, and she goes, Coach, can we talk? And I almost just said her name. I said, yeah. I said, but if it's about the masks, no. I said, because I'll be the first one to go to the administration, to go to the school board and say that we sat down for a friggin' half an hour, 3 feet apart with no masks on, but then we're putting on a show for everyone else. I said, I'm not doing it. And then we never discussed it again. But yeah, that whole thing was just,
well, I'll tell you,
kudos to you, Coach, for taking a stand, because we
I love
know
it.
how that
I'll tell you what was the beginning.
I'm always going to be a coach that fights for my players.
I'll tell you what was the beginning of the and Derek was there. So the beginning of it, they came up with this, and you're going to laugh at this when I tell you this. They came up with this plan that you could have no more than 10 players in a pod at any time, right? Okay, so I don't remember what
they could make it 11. It had to be 10.
Right. 10 players, right? So we had 60 players or whatever. I don't remember what it was. Maybe we had more than that, 70. So we
were probably close to 70.
I think the first day we went out, we constructed these pods, this nonsense. And then the second day I had this idea. I said, well, you want us 6 feet apart, like the pods couldn't be any more than 6 feet from each other, right? I said, how about if we take every player and we line them 6 feet apart the whole entire practice, so we can run our offense, but everybody's, the linemen are just 6 feet apart. Because that's
a whole new meaning to the term spread offense.
That was spread, right? So I said, no problem. We'll spread them out completely. Everybody spread out, and we'll run our system, and everyone will be 6 feet apart in pods of one, right? Because it said the maximum a number of play. It didn't say minimum, no maximum number of play. So I get pulled in there, and they're starting to complain to me. And I explained, what are you talking about? I said, it said maximum 10. I'm doing less. I'm spreading them more than you are, right? That was the beginning of the because I was being creative. They said, no. I said, well, let me explain to you like this. I said, you didn't read. You think you know the rules, but you're not actually reading the rules. If you want to tell me that this is what you want me to do, no matter what, then just say it. Yes. Don't say correct. The rules say a maximum of 10, and then the pods must be 6 feet apart. If you want me to have it 10, okay, I'll go.
Just say 10. Just say 10.
But don't make believe that you're trying to, because I created a way that's even more spread out than what you created, right?
Safer.
It was me kind of being, yes, was I
being you,
me being me. But my point of it was, how ridiculous is all of this? Just tell me what you want me to do instead of making believe that you're trying to do the safer way, because I'm quote unquote doing the safer way.
Yeah, the whole thing was a joke. I've realized now with men boxing and women's boxing matches,
right.
If that nonsense ever happens again, I'm just gonna have every one of our players and coaches identify as a quarter of a person. So, yeah, these four guys are just one person.
Right, of course. And in California, you can identify as whatever you want.
That's the crazy.
No, you can identify as whatever you want as long as it's the right thing that they want you to identify as.
Correct, 100%. There's an angle.
If I, as an adult, decided that I wanted to be a horse, they would say no. But if I wanted to be something else,
a jackass,
I wanted to be a woman, they'd be like, okay, great.
Exactly.
You know, I want to be a horse.
It was a crazy year, but
I want to take a crap in my yard because I'm a horse. You know, like no, you can't do that. But if I want to be a woman and box in the Olympics, and I'm a man, that's okay.
You know what? To go full circle with it, I tell our young men all the time. We do an FCA a team Bible study. Now, sometimes there's 4 young men.
That's amazing. I think that's amazing. And you're at a public school, Coach?
I teach at a private school, but at Coronado is a public school, and I tell them all the time. I actually.
And you can do that.
I haven't been fired yet. Yeah. So I'm doing it through FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes.
I just think that's amazing. I think that's amazing that you can bring that into a public setting. And like I said, you haven't been fired yet. So I'm just not to cut you off, but kudos. I love it.
Thank you. And it's student led. So I'm not even cheating the system. It's student led. I'm not at everyone, but I'm there. I had a young man brand new to our program yesterday, track kid. He's going to be a senior, but I think, man, he could help us right away. And I know we could help him. He came in because he had some questions about the offense. And then that was after the morning practice. Then he came in half an hour before the afternoon practice and said, hey, what's up? And he looked just beat down. And I'm like, I'll make a very long story short. I said, hey, what's up? And there were some of the other coaches in the staff room with me. And he was like, can I talk to you privately? So I go into the other classroom with him. And he was just stressed out with his girlfriend, doesn't want him to play. She's a cheerleader, but she feels like football will take too much time away from the relationship with cheerleading, won't, whatever. So I looked dead at him. I said, do you believe in God? Because I don't ever want to preach to someone.
Right.
You know? And I want to respect that. Not everyone does. He goes, yeah, I do, Coach. I said, do you mind if we say a prayer? And I said to him, I'm probably going to lose my job over this someday, but that's a hill I'm willing to die on. And I think I'm going to get preachy for a second. I think we live in America, especially, which blows my mind. We live in a society where, hey, freedom of speech, people can do whatever they want as long as it fits the agenda of the people who are trying to run things. And I'm like, listen, too many people are willing to go with the flow of anything and everything. And I think for all of us, if we're going to have a life that we're proud of and a life that lights us on fire and gets us up in the morning, we got to have a hill that we're willing to die on. And for me, that's a hill I'm willing to die on. So yeah, I haven't been fired yet. I might text you guys or direct message you on Twitter tomorrow. Be like, hey, administration saw the post. I'm out of a job.
Don't get yourself fired over a podcast.
Yeah, not worth it. No, Coach, not worth it. Don't do it.
I'm coming to New Jersey.
I'm going to tell you one thing, and it's a little different, obviously, college and whatnot. And Coach, I was a D3 player, played at Montclair State, here in Jersey. And like I said, like our coach every game, and Coach Gene Cola, like legend. 35 years, like one of the winningest coaches in the history of college football, great human being. But before every game, he would just say, look, I don't know who you're praying to or care who you're praying to or doing whatever, but you now let's take some time right now, talk to who you talk to, bow your heads, and let's go. And that was pregame, every game. And it wasn't, anything like he wasn't pushing anything on anybody. Yep. He just gave everybody the opportunity to go and kind of do your thing. And for me, I love that.
Yeah. And we have a memorial at the end of our field by our scoreboard of a young man who passed away well before my becoming the head coach. I do have his brother come speak to the team. Every year we have a rivalry game. So I have him come talk to the team about what his brother, who he was and as a person and everything. But I did ask our administration when I first got the job if I can have a moment. I said, can we say team prayer? They said, absolutely not. I said, can we have a moment of silence? So similar to what you said, Coach, I tell our team, you guys know my faith means everything to me. I know some of you believe, some of you don't, but out of respect for this family, we're going to bow our heads and have a moment of, like you said, your coach said, whatever you want to do. It's not a rah-rah moment, but let's just honor this family and this young man and get your head right.
100%.
Yeah, I think, my personal belief is that I don't coach at any school anymore, so I could say all these things, I believe in Jesus Christ. I believe in God, and that's who I ultimately serve. And that, obviously, people have different opinions about but to me, I think it's important because it helps you understand that it's not just about you, and it's about serving, and I think that's a big thing for me. And I get it. People have different religions, and listen, I'm a born again Christian. My father's Jewish. Okay. So there you go. Because my mother was a Presbyterian. Right. So, and I'm a born again Christian. So in the same family, my father's Jewish and my mother's Presbyterian, and I'm a born again Christian. Right. So, and not that I'm perfect. And like I said, I'll curse, I make mistakes, But I believe that, you're saved, and if you have Jesus in your heart and your faith, and you put him first. But yeah, it's I think everybody, that's the thing that I think is so important in America, that is the people should be able to have an opportunity to express their faith if they want to. If they don't want to, they don't have to. It's up to you. No one's forcing you to do one thing or the other, and I think that's important in as we continue to, like, this right now in America. It's a lot of, you're right. This group in power thinks this should be the right thing, and this group in power thinks that this should be the right thing. And you're in California, so if the left is going to be more in power, so if you lean right or you're conservative, then you're on the outs. And in all fairness to other states, even though I'm a conservative, but in all fairness to other states, if you're in a conservative state, maybe people who are towards the left may feel that they're pushed in, and I don't really know, but I'm just saying, like, because I happen to live in New Jersey, which is to the left, right? So, and I'm conservative, so I'm in the minority.
Just slightly, we're just slightly to the left here.
But but my point is that I think people should have the freedom. Now,
it should be your decision, right? We preach like
make
all
your
this
decision.
freedom,
It shouldn't be
you have
forced.
rights and all this. You should be able to express what you want to express. That's what this country was built on. It's that kind of thing.
God is important.
Believe it. I always take my time, and sometimes I have players ask me, Coach, why do you do that? And I give them a little background about, like, losing a relative of mine that really affected my life and whatnot. And I just take a little time before every single game, to just kind of do a little something like that. And my guys ask about it, and it's kind of like an open book. Like I said, like, you do you, man. Yep. Like, I don't judge. I don't, like, really get into that whole thing. But, like, at some point you need somebody to talk to up top, or whatever you feel like you're going to need somebody that you need to go to and do that. And that's just kind of how I pose it, is like, hey, you do you, whatever you think, but you should be openly allowed to do what you want to do.
Well, I agreed. And one of my favorite quotes is always preach the gospel, and when necessary, use words. And what I mean by that is, coaches, as fathers, we don't need, I did mention Jesus' name yesterday during our meeting at one point. But usually I don't during practice. And my point is, I can show Christ-like love by the way I discipline a player, by the way I love him up, by the way I correct him, by the way, just the way we conduct ourselves. It might make our players think, hey, there was something different about Coach. And maybe it's years after they graduate, they reach out to us and be like, yeah, I'm struggling. What did you do to get yourself through those struggles?
There's no doubt about it. Actually, one of the things that was great about COVID for me was that I was on, like, a Bible study all the time. I wish I was on it as much as I was during COVID. I was in there 2 days a week, like, all the time. Like, it was Zoom or whatever, you know what I mean? And it was like, it was phenomenal, because it kept me centered during like, I was a lot like how are you, or I was like, okay, I understand some of these things, but some of these things are crazy. Like, it's like, rational. Let's be more rational than we are extreme on some of these things.
We had people you could go to the beaches out here in California. I kid you not. You could go to the beaches, but if you sat down, they would have some poor lifeguard come over and say, excuse me, sir, but you can't be sitting down, because that was dangerous. But you could be walking the beach. They arrested some surfer. I wish I were kidding, but
it was actually the same here in New Jersey. So it was the same, because I remember we went to the beach and there were police. They allowed you to go on the beach. I mean, there was a point when everybody was, like, shut down. But I'm saying, once they started to allow some of that stuff, we were allowed to walk on the beach. I remember this because we live near the beach here. So I was allowed to walk on the beach.
Well, of course you do. Look at that house you're in. Of course you live by the beach.
He's got a full-grown grand piano in the background over there.
You probably have ocean front.
Derek lives near the beach too, okay? Derek he lives right near the beach too.
Very different neighborhoods, brother. Very different neighborhoods.
All right, guilty. But yeah, no, I really, it was amazing. But you know what? As, like, I try to look at it as, like, you know what? The people aren't going to allow things like, there are people that will allow those things to happen again, but a lot of us have realized, hey, this is not gonna fly twice. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, it was a situation that nobody, and I'll say this for myself, like the first few days, I didn't know what was going on. Like, I was scared myself, I didn't know. And I'm conservative. I didn't know what the heck was going on. Right. But once you realize kind of what was going on, that's when I thought it really started to get crazy, when people realized that there were things that were not causing it. And we kept kind of moving forward down this crazy path. And that's the thing that I don't think, myself and a lot of other people will allow to have happen again, which is, hey, there's handling things because we're being safe, and then there's handling things that are and making it ludicrous ruals
because you're being controlled.
Right, to be controlled. And there's really a difference between that. To me, there's really a difference between everybody. I think everybody gets the safe part, right? It's the control part that we're not into.
But to tie it back into football, and I'm not trying to make this funny or a stretch, but for those of you that don't want football, don't sign your kid up for football.
Right.
For the rest of us that see the value in it, please just, and I say this kind of respectfully, just shut up and let us play football. Let us coach football. We see the value in it. For those of you that want to be in the car,
you go do what you want to do, and we're going to do what we want to do.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I would never go and tell a kid, oh, don't play hockey. Like I saw a story about a kid getting a blade and going across his neck, and somebody happened to get really seriously injured. It happens every once in a while in hockey, or someone gets checked and something bad happens.
Look,
I would never tell someone, don't play hocky, don't play lacrosse,
look, Dave,
don't run track, because you could have a heart attack if you're not in shape and you run the mile and you just decide, and because high school sports are. There's a kid that's running the mile and he's really not that great, but he's on the team. And no, does the coach not throw him in the mile? Of course he does.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah, but anyway, Coach, we'll let you go. I could go on all day. I could do a separate podcast with you.
Coach, really appreciate it, man. Really appreciate you taking the time, sitting down. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, same guys. Blessing to connect with you guys. Whenever you guys put this out there, obviously I'll share it on my platforms. And I don't know if there's anything I can do for you guys, but if there ever is, just let me know.
You know what?
Same here, Coach. It works both ways.
Putting out the content you put out, because I think it's phenomenal. I think
continue, please.
Coaches and kids need to see it. That's where kids are. You know what I'm saying? That's where kids are, right? And so one of the things about social media is, you know what? If you want to connect with them, you connect them with them offline, which is phenomenal. But it's also, if you're able to get positive experiences to them where they are, that's even more phenomenal in a sense, because they will understand, oh, this guy, no, even though that may not be what he wants to be doing, he understands that that's where we are. So, you know what? Hey, and the messages you have are, they're awesome, dude. Your stuff comes in my feed all the time, and believe me, I watch it.
I appreciate that, guys. Appreciate it.
Coach, thank you so much, man. Enjoy. Good luck with your season. Like we said, if there's anything we can do, and we got to link up after again and do something else, because we could talk all day. So
absolutely.
I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time. Good luck.
Same. God bless, guys. Appreciate you.
Have a great day, Coach.
You too. Take care.
That was phenomenal. He is awesome with a capital.
Dude, we can talk to him for hours about 1,000 different things. I love it that he's like an East Coast guy on the West Coast. Like, listen, I also will say, like, he's obviously done things right, because the way he approaches things and does things like might not fly with some programs. So they obviously respect him enough and understand that, what he's doing for those kids and his players is on a different level. So kudos to him for always sticking to quote unquote his guns and, like, you know what I mean? Like preaching what he does, but also evolving. Cause even, he said, I'm not the same guy I used to be, or I'm not the same coach. Like, so we hit on a lot of stuff.
That's part of coaching. Awesome. Yeah. That's part of it.
Absolutely. Adapt or die, man. Like, it is kind of what it is.
No, he's phenomenal. And honestly, his stuff, because I started watching it like a couple of years ago, and it just comes in my feed, and I'm like, oh, he has so many great nuggets. So, all right, we'll get off there, and another phenomenal. We're rolling. I think we got a bunch next week. I have to look and see exactly what we have, but we have a bunch next week, so we'll see. We'll see you then.